Good morning, everyone. This is Lisa with Old Orchid Yarnery, and I'm back with our next installment of our Building in Color class. This time we are using Intarsia, which we've done before, but we're doing an Intarsia cable in the middle of purl stitches on either side. But before we get to that, I just want to direct you to your book. On page 8 and 9 is where she first talks about Intarsia when we did this very first panel, with that river of color running up the center of the solid color sides. And so in this section, especially on page 9, she talks about joining a new color and interlocking the new color and how you do that at each time when you're switching colors so that they interlock together on the back of the work. And she also talks about managing the yarn. So I'll just remind you, we're using 2 different colors here, 2 balls of one color, because those will be the side sections here. 2 balls, so I've got 2 balls of my multi, and then I have 1 ball of my pink, which is my cable. And if you'll recall, when we did this, we talked about how to keep your yarns from tangling when you're using those 2 colors. So we'll talk about that a little more when I get to the demonstration. But I just wanted to remind you to read this section if you need a reminder on how to interlock. The thing that's different on this particular panel is, on our first Intarsia panel, she talked about how to join a new color. But in this panel, we are casting on with both colors, so we won't have to do that step, but you will need to do the interlocking and managing your yarn. So let's get to this month's cable panel with the cable. This is what her sample looks like right here. She's got the white cable running up the middle of the brown on either side. Be sure to read through all the instructions that she has for you here at the beginning. She does talk about casting on with all the colors. If that sounds intimidating to you, don't worry, it's really not. And you just don't want to, as she says, don't want to overthink it. Either the casting on with multiple colors or the interlocking at the back, and how we have to treat that, especially in this pattern. So don't overthink it, don't worry about it. Let's get started. So here is my sample right now. So far I've done 7 repeats, or I'm almost done with 7 repeats. And it's kind of fun to do, I really enjoy it. What you'll find is that it's fairly simple, being that other than the interlocking colors, the rest of it really isn't that difficult. For the 12 rows that we've got, only 2 of those rows have a cable in them. And the rest of them are either you're purling the beginning and knitting across the middle and purling the end, or you're knitting the beginning, purling across the middle and knitting the end. So that's it. So out of 10, you've got 10 rows of that and 2 rows that involve the cable twist in the middle. So let's get started on that. Right now I am on row 9. I'm getting ready to start row 9, which is one of our cable cross rows. There is a chart that you can use on page 39, or there are written instructions on page 38, so you can do whatever you prefer. And I moved my little note over here from the first panel to remind me about how to manage that yarn to keep it from twisting. So at the end of a right side row, I'm going to turn the work towards me with the yarn over the top. And at the end of a wrong side row, I'm going to turn it away from me. I'll show you as we do it. All right, so row 9. Seems a little strange starting with row 9 and not row 1, but don't worry, we'll get to it. Row 9 is using color C. We're to purl 8. So here's my color C, that's my multi. So I'm going to move the yarn to the front. Right now, all of my yarns are untangled. Oh, no, they're not. They were till I started filming, of course. Anyway, let me get them untangled here for just a moment. Put that one over here. All right, so my yarns are all untangled, and I am at the beginning of a wrong side row. So I'm going to purl 8 with my color C. I'll be showing you continental style this time. We'll switch to English too, don't worry about that. It's not different really at all. We're gonna purl 8, and then we get to our cable cross. Now, row 3 and row 9 are the rows that you're gonna do the cable cross on. They're different in that in row 3, you knit 4 first, and then you do your 2 cable crosses. In row 9, you do your 2 cable crosses first, and then you knit 4 at the end. And that offsets to make this nice braided look here. All right, so I am at my color change, and I'm getting ready to do my cable crosses with my pink here, which is my color C, color A. So what I have to do is I have to interlock these two at the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the color I was using over the top and then bring my pink, and so you'll see the pink now is catching that multicolor at the back. Row 9 says I'm going to do my cable 8 back twice. So do cable 8 back. I like to use this type of a cable needle. You can use the type that you prefer. I'm going to take 4. Cable 8 back means I'm going to take 4 and hold them to the back. Then I'm going to knit 4, and then I'm going to put the 4 from my cable needle back onto my needle and knit those. So here I'm going to do 4. Sometimes cables say cable left back, cable right back. I really prefer this type of notation where they're just saying cable back, cable 8 back. So you don't have to try to remember if the left one is to the back or the front, etc. So here's my 4 stitches. I'm going to hold them to the back. The reason I like this particular cable needle is I just throw it back there and it's secure. Now I'm going to grab my yarn again. I'm not going to get it tangled around that cable needle, but I'm just going to throw that to the back, and I'm going to come over here and I'm going to knit 4 stitches. And I'm going to, hang on just a minute. All right. I'm going to knit 4 stitches, and the first one I'm going to pull pretty tight because I want to help close up any big gap is going to be at that cable turn. There's 4, and now I'm going to put those 4 stitches back on my needle. Depending on the type of cable needle you use and the way you put your stitches on it, you can actually knit straight from the cable needle, but with this one and the way I put them on, I just put them back on my needle. I find that easier. And so now I'm going to knit 4. Now we're going to do this twice in a row, the cable 8 back. So here's my 1, 2, 3, 4. Come on now, get in there. So I've completed one of my cable crosses, but now I have to do it again. It says to do it twice. The cable 8 back notation is in parentheses, and then it says twice right after it, which means you just do what's in the parentheses twice. So again, I'm going to slip 4 to the cable needle. I'm going to hold that to the back. Then I'm going to knit 4, pulling the first one fairly snugly. 2, 3, and 4. And now I'm going to put those stitches back on my left hand needle. Now when we're slipping these stitches onto the cable needle and back onto the regular needle, we're not twisting them. We're just holding the needles tip to tip and moving them over. All right, and now we're going to knit those 4. Again, knitting the first one fairly snugly. It feels a little tight, but that's okay. It's just because we're twisting 4 stitches and knitting them in a different order, which is what makes the cable. So there's my 4. So now I've completed both of my cable crosses. There they are. And now the instructions say just to knit the last 4. So I'm going to knit the last 4. Then I'm going to do an interlock again of my 2 colors, because now I'm going to go on to the second ball of my multicolor. So I will take the color I was just using over the top of the new color and pull it down so that it is crossing over it and locks it in on the back. And now we're going to purl 8. Now what I like to do after the interlock is I'll knit 1 stitch and then I pull on my old color. I don't know if you can see that. It's kind of loose right there, but I'm going to pull on my old color, and that's going to tighten that up so that I don't have a lot of gaps. The author talks about a different way to manage the gaps between the knits and the purls, and you can do what she's calling for as well. Just read what she has to say on the pages right before the pattern here. So it would be page 36 and 37, I believe. But I find that it's just easy to just give that little tug. Okay, so now I'm at the end of row 9. Let me mark it off my list here, and we'll move on to row 10. All right, so I'm at the end of a right side row. So I'm going to turn the work towards me with the tips to the right and the yarn over the top. So right now you'll see my yarn is tangled up, but don't worry, after my next wrong side row, it won't be tangled up anymore. Row 10, now 10, 11, 12, and all of the other rows except for 3 and 9 are just purling or knitting with the one color and purling or knitting with the other color and interlocking at the change. So row 10, I'm going to knit the first 8 because this is a wrong side row. which means you're seeing the knit side of my side panels and the purl side of my cable panel. So we'll just knit the first 8. I will just do this row again with you and show you the interlocking again. In fact, let me do it English style. And then I'll show you how turning untangles the yarns at the end of the row. So we will do 8. Now when you interlock, you need to make sure that you're interlocking the yarns on the wrong side of the work. So pay attention to what side of the work you're on as you're locking those yarns. You don't want to accidentally interlock them on the right side of the work. The first couple rows, it might seem a little hard to determine the right and the wrong side because you don't have much of that cable yet going up the center, and the knit side facing you of your side panels might deceive you to think that that's the right side, but it's really not. So use a marker if you need to mark your right side rows. Okay, so I'm at the color change now. So I've just knit 8. Now I'm supposed to purl 20 with my center color, my color A. And in order to do that, I'm going to bring, I've been knitting, I'm going to take my multicolor, I'm going to bring it to the front because I need to interlock on the wrong side of the fabric. And then I'm going to cross them over by bringing the pink up over the multi. And I'm ready to purl now. And we will purl across those stitches. I do the first one. I'm going to give my multicolor a little tug to tighten up that join. And I can get this back out of my way here. All right, so now we're just purling. Oh, I was doing English style, sorry about that. I'm just going to purl across these 20 stitches in the middle. Fun thing about cables is they look pretty complicated, but they're usually just a lot of knitting and purling, and then every so often you do that little twist. I remember when I first started to do cables, I thought you had to do twists every row, but you don't. Depending on the size of the cables you're knitting, sometimes you'll do it more often, but in this case, it is just after 6 rows. And then again after, what, 5 more, I think. It's just twice during the 12 rows. All right, so here we are purling across our 20 center stitches. Now you see how that looks kind of big right there? That's where the cable cross is. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and purl. Keep it a little as tight as you can when you're purling across those gaps, and it won't be visible on the front side. All right. And almost to the next interlock. So I am done. That's 20 with that color. Now my yarn is already on the wrong side of the fabric with my third ball, and my pink is on the wrong side of the fabric, so all I have to do here is interlock them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the old yarn I was just using over the top of the new yarn, bring the new yarn forward, and you see how it goes over the top of that pink and locks it in right there. And now I'm supposed to knit, so I have to now bring that multicolor yarn back to the back again. And I will knit the first stitch, and then I'm going to give my pink yarn a little tug to tighten up that join, and then knit the remaining stitches here to the end. Now since I'm at the end of a wrong side row, theoretically, let's see if it works, I should turn away from me with the tips to the right, and it should untangle my yarns, because before I do that, you'll notice they are tangled up right now. They're twisting around each other. But now I'm going to turn away from me, tips to the right, and now let's look. Oh, it didn't work. Not too bad though, easy to take that ball and move it. It takes a couple of times doing it to get the hang of it. I must have done something wrong. But hey, you know, that's all right, it happens, right? All right, that was row 10, so I'm going to cross that off. Now I'm going to do rows 11 and 12 and 1 and 2, which are all just the knitting and purling of the 2 colors and doing the interlock at the change. And then I'll come back and I'll show you row 3, which is with the cable cross again. Okay, I am now to row 3. So row 3, we are going to start with purling 8 with our color C. As I've been doing these rows, I've been experimenting with my turning the work towards me and turning away from me to untangle the yarns and keep them from getting too tangled up. And it worked about half of the time. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong, but it's really not that bad just to move a ball around a little bit. It's usually just one of the side color balls that I have to switch, but I'm not sure what's going on. But don't panic, don't make it a big deal. All right, so I'm gonna interlock now. So I'm gonna bring my color I was just using over the top of my new color on the wrong side of the work, which in this case is behind me. And now row 3 says to knit 4 first before we do our 2 cables. So we're gonna knit 4. So we'll look back for a minute. Here was our last cable cross right here. And we did the 2 cable crosses first and then knit the 4 at the end. So now we're gonna knit the 4 at the beginning and then do our 2 cable crosses on the other side. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. And on row 3, the cable cross is a cable 8 front, which means just what it sounds like. We're gonna put 4 stitches. The reason it's a cable 8 is it's a total of 8 stitches that we're crossing over each other, but just 4 at a time. So 4 stitches on the cable needle, drop it to the front, knit the next 4, do the first one fairly snugly to close up that space that's being formed by those 4 stitches coming out of order. And now we'll go, just a moment. Okay, sorry for the interruption. My phone was ringing. All right, so I think I was at the point where I knit knit my 4 stitches, pulled 4 for my cable 8 front on my cable needle, and started knitting the second 4, pulling that one, the first one, kind of tight to close up that gap that's caused by pulling those 4 stitches out of order. So we're going to knit 4, and now I'm going to put my 4 stitches back on my left-hand needle to complete my cable 8 front. Again, just tip to tip. I don't want to twist the stitches. I just want to knit them out of order. All right, and now the second 4, it's going to feel kind of tight because we're knitting them out of order, but don't worry about it. Knit the first one, give it a little tug, and then knit the other 3. And now just like on row 9, we're going to do that cable 8 front again because the cable 8 front notation is in parentheses, and it says right after it twice. So we're going to take 4 for the front, 3 and 4, drop it to the front of the work, knit the next 4, pulling that first one fairly snugly to close up that gap, 3 and 4, and now returning these 4 in the same order, not twisting them or anything like that, back over to the left-hand needle, and knitting them. It's going to feel tight. Pull the first one fairly snugly to help close up any gaps. And at the end of this row, I'm going to show you what I mean about the gaps, and I also want to talk about the setup row that I did not mention at the beginning since I didn't start on row 1. Okay, so here I am at my interlock. I'm on the right side of the work, so I'm going to make sure both my yarns are on the wrong side of the work, and I'm going to cross the one I was just using over the top of the one I'm going to start using. And now I'm supposed to purl, so I now have to bring that yarn to the front. I'm going to purl the first stitch. I'm going to pull my old yarn, give it a little tug to tighten up that interlock, and purl to the end of the row. Almost there. I'm finding that although there's going to be quite a few repeats again in this pattern, they go pretty quickly. It really doesn't take that long to do them. All right, so here's the end of that. So I've just finished row 3. Let me mark that off. And let me show you what I mean about the gap that could form at the cable. Now, because we've got stitches crossing over, there really is a hole in there. If I pulled this apart, you might be able to see it. Yeah, it's not too bad because I've pulled pretty snugly at that. But because the fabric is physically crossing over the top, as you can see here, if I take this cable needle, I can put it right under that cross. So there's a physical gap right underneath that cable cross. And we want to pull it pretty tightly so that that gap doesn't become visible in the work. Well, I'm kind of pleased I can't even make it show up. But if you find that you're seeing a gap right in here where the cable cross is, then you're not pulling it quite tightly enough. So you want to pull it as tight as you can. The other thing the author addresses is the gaps that could happen at the interlock because of changing from the purl to the knit stitch. As you may have heard before, a purl stitch uses slightly more yarn than a knit stitch. And so sometimes you may notice if you're doing ribbing, especially 1x1 ribbing, I find it really apparent. It can be. You can really see that looseness between the knit stitch to the purl stitch because of that extra yarn. So she talks a little bit about how to manage that. I manage it. I mean, it doesn't look too bad if you look at the interlock. It looks pretty good, pretty tight. I manage it just by giving the old yarn a little tug after I've done the first stitch of the new color, and that kind of locks that interlock in a little more tightly. All right, the last thing I want to talk to you about is all the way back here at the beginning. So we cast on using 2 colors. So we have a nice edge that is multicolored like this across just like the rest of the panel. Unlike our first panel that had Intarsia, I think we cast on with just the white. And then we added the red, or my case, the red in on the next row. But here, what you want to do is you're going to cast on 28 stitches. 6 with your color C, 8 with your color C, 12 with your color A, and 8 with your color C. And that's not difficult to do because you've got 2 balls of your color C anyway. So you go ahead and cast those on, and then you're going to do what's called a setup row. You do it 1 time at the beginning in place of row 1 on the first repeat only, interlocking the yarn and everything. So what you're going to do then is you're going to purl 8 using color A, and then you're going to knit 2, knit front back 8 times. So you're doing a big increase here because if you remember on this color A in the middle, we only cast on 12 stitches, but our cable needs 20 stitches. So we're knitting 2, knit front back, knit 2, knit front back, knit 2, knit front back, knit 2, knit front back 8 times, and then knit the last 2. And that gets you up to your 20 stitches. And then using your color C, you're going to purl 8. So on the very first time, that is your row 1. So what I did up here on my little post-it note, I put setup and row 1, and I did it. And now every other time when I come back to it, I just do row 1 as indicated here. There's no knitting front back. There's no increases. That was just at that first row so that you can get up to the amount of stitches you need for the cable. Now at the very end, you want to end after row 5 or 11 in order to bind off when you get to the length that you want. Now you're going to do your row 5 or 11, and then on row 6 or 12, she says at the top of page 39, you're going to do a decrease row, because what we want to do now is we want to decrease those stitches back out again so that we're binding off just the original 28 that we started with. So to do that, you're going to use color C, knit 8. This is on a wrong side row. And then use color A, you're going to purl 2 together, purl 2 together 8 times, and then purl the last 2, and then knit with color C the last 8. I hope that makes sense. I'm sure that as you start doing it will. I feel like sometimes it's harder to explain in words how to do something than it is to just do it. But you know, if you run into any trouble, you can always get a hold of me. I've got help desk, and rewatch the video here. And I look forward to seeing your colors that you're doing. And as always, email me or get a hold of me with any questions you have. Thanks so much. Have fun knitting. Bye-bye.